thank you. Nice to be here this afternoon. I represent the Italian National Node of E-RIHS, and I'm going to give you a little bit of information about how Access has worked over the last 20 years with some of our highlights. So I've titled this 2 Decades of Access Service Excellence. Our Access service has been about giving multidisciplinary research individuals, whether or not they're researchers, scholars, whoever they are, and their groups, the means to achieve their research goals, which would have been otherwise impossible. We have seen that access to instrumentation, archives, and competences is actually a gateway to innovation. So the access does incorporate the availability of tools that we provide, resources and skills, which are necessary for the researchers in our community to thrive and to excel. We feel that by giving these different opportunities and the advancements that we can foster, an actual culture of continuous learning and a growth that makes a useful and a meaningful contribution, not only to academia, but to society and to the economy. So I'm going to give you some information about what was the history of our access provision, what is our timeline, and what is our growth been like. I'm going to give you some of our highlights and some of our achievements. I will tell you what our current status is and what our future outlook seems. So I'd like to introduce you to Professor Bruno Bernetti and Professor Antonio Scamellotti. They are the actual founders and foundations of the access service provision where we all are now. So if we can imagine, so they actually realized before the year 2000, by seeing exactly what was happening and the tide of evolution in the heritage science field. There were 100 publications in the field in 1995, going up to over 350 in the year 2000. But they did recognize, and specifically Professor Brunetti recognized, that the scientific study and conservation was a very active field in Europe. But it was a very active field within the different nations. It was being carried out at levels of organization belonging to national ministries of culture, national research agencies, and universities. Maybe they were in cooperative programs with conservators, archaeologists, and art historians. They did realize together that there would be great gains with the increase of cooperative research among European institutions and laboratories. So between 2000 and 2004, with the input of the European community, it was necessary and it was crucial that state-of-the-art infrastructures would need to be led in cultural heritage fields. Potential partners were able to get involved in different kind of workshops. And even though they had little history of what it would be like to cooperate for transnational access, they could explore these strategies for a better coordination of their activities, because obviously working together in a team is working better than working alone. So the first initiatives that they did go through, we saw an enhanced effective complementarity, knowledge sharing, and join of resources. So they were very forward thinking at the start of the century, the turn of the century. Oh, I'm just going to change here. Can you see? All right. So what the idea was behind access was what we needed to transform the actual needs into solutions. So we wanted to be able to permit on-site examinations of immovable and fragile artworks. We did want to be able to study objects which are movable and samples to access large-scale facilities. And we did want to make accessible the archives and museums of research centres. This work was combined, this scattered work was then combined into a network of cooperation, and through transnational access for, as you can read there, multidisciplinary investigations of materials. Then we worked on deterioration mechanisms, environmental monitoring, and conservation strategies. We did this by building MOLAB. MOLAB actually, at the early 2000s, the fact that we were able to set up high performance portable analytical equipment, We could then bring these for use in non-invasive and in situ measurements on artworks without any movement of the artwork from its location. We were permitted for a direct material research on precious artworks. This was possible both within a museum setting, on a scaffolding, exactly where the object was held. This then grew to incorporate even working on sites. FixLab instead was given access to the large-scale facilities established in the fixed location. Particle accelerators, neutron and laser-based laboratories for then, as I said, in-depth studies of microsamples or movable objects. ArcLab instead gave access to the physical and local digital collections that constitute valuable research resources. These could be objects, technical images, sample collections, reference materials, analytical data, and conservation documentation, which have been for a long time stored in museums, galleries, conservation and research institutions. So for the timeline and growth of the 3 physical transnational access platforms, I used the same scheme that we were showing before. So between 2004 and 2009, we saw the first activities between MoLab and FixLab within EU-RTEC. We grew towards Charisma and we incorporated the ArcLab facilities. Over the years, we grew and we continue to grow with the number of instruments, the number of techniques, the number of providers, and the number of countries. Right up until now, we have just completed the Hyperion HS project and we are looking forward to the future. As the projects grew, as the involvement of researchers and providers and facilities grew, we also saw that we and our management also had to grow as well. We defined that the access modality was exclusively based on scientific excellence. By the time Charisma was working, we were working a lot with the data processing end and the sharing. The co-creation with our users became of great importance, also because we had ArcLab. In Hyperion CH, we are also still very interested and give great information and importance to data management and quality control measures, or we're starting to map and see exactly what kind of services we are providing. When we got to Hyperion, we had integrated access management, which means that all of the platforms, we were all working together. We were working with digitalized procedures. Again, top of the board, we have data management. We now have a quality management of the services, and we're directly involved with our users and collect our user feedback. And we have outreach to the new communities. Now, considering all of this, one recurring feature was the data and the digitalization. This obviously is under construction, and it will be the new additional platform which is going to be within E-RIHS. So DigiLab will provide the data and the digital tools for creating new heritage science knowledge. So our highlights and achievements of the physical transnational access platforms. If I can say to you in Hyperion HS, so from 2020 until 2024, there have been so many worthwhile scientific excellent projects. MoLab has provided 72 different access campaigns to 21 different projects. FixLab has provided access to over 150 projects, and ArcLab has fulfilled access to 29 projects. So when I was asked today to show some highlights, I could say we have so many highlights. It's of great importance and interest to go and read what our highlights are, and these are available on our websites. But I have chosen some highlights for you, but I have chosen them specifically to highlight some achievements and outputs. So for example, I'm going to show you that there have been different MOLAB investigations, so using non-invasive, and in situ instrumentation for the examination of the Van Gogh sunflowers. So this is the Amsterdam version, and it was in the Van Gogh Museum. So there were different mobile campaigns that went there. And first of all, what we worked on was the identification and the distribution of the different yellows, so the chrome-based yellows, and their different degradation compounds. There was also the detection of the other pigments, so for eosine, for example. The identification of varnishes used, and to carry out cleaning tests for varnish removal, and then also for their monitoring. So these were just incorporating different instrumentations and different accesses to respond to these specific questions. But not only did we respond to those specific questions when we were on site, we brought home that work. It did stimulate different types of research. So research, which was brought forward a lot by Letizia Monaco from CNR. And what she did study was the degradation of these chrome yellows. She did study from the macro level right down to the nano level, and she has produced a further 15 research publications, books. So a very continued research from one specific project. But not only this, we also have a direct impact from this kind of work. So this from a press release from the Van Gogh Museum. So they say, one notable conclusion of the research is that the layers of the ground and paint are stable, but very sensitive to vibrations and changes in humidity and temperature. They say that they're not going to be moving the painting, and it's going to be moved as little as possible. But more so than this, so the insights and the information that was developed and gathered from the MOLAB work helped the museum actually to refine their lighting standards. And they reduced then the lighting so that there's not going to be so much degradation, and it's going to be within an acceptable level. So there we can see a direct impact for the museums from the work that was carried out from our transnational access. If we say a good and valid access also coming from the ARC lab, so from the archives, we see that an analysis and a research method in management of photographic materials, gelatin glass plate collections. As you can see, we are inclusive of researchers at any stage of their career. So we work with PhD students, we work with novice users, we work also with expert users. In this specific access, this user had different photographic objects, different reports that she was able to access. Her research aims were to provide a better knowledge about the photographic process through the exchange of experiences between institutions. And through IPC, she came with a lot of questions. And who from ArcLab is going to be better than creating a co-knowledge? So they actually sit together, they discuss, they answer all of these direct questions. So that is the beauty of the ArcLab facility. She did have certain outcomes with regards to the improvements of storage, the mount and the conservation treatments of the photographic objects. So she saw what happens with broken glass, storage effect, biological attacks, and actually how we can do a better storage. So this information she is going to take with her in that delicate moment from a PhD, and she's going to bring that forward with her. If we say instead from FixLab, so simultaneous ion beam investigations for lapis lazuli provenience analysis. So this one was in collaboration with the New Algae, and they were always part of the transnational access from the EU Artec. The ion beam analysis was chosen because it was possible to investigate the single crystals non-invasively of specific mineral phases among all the ones constituting this stone. Okay, this new microbeam line was the optimum solution for what their scope was, because normally the artifacts that they have would be too precious to be measured within a vacuum. So that they were able then to grant the same time with very low detection limits and advanced setup, so that they were able to observe then the weak markers for an Afghan provenance. So when I got in touch also with a fixed lab provider on this, I thought it was very nice to include his discussion. So he mentioned that the user requested access on several calls since Charisma and developed a protocol to identify the different possible provenance. The specificity of the project were for us a good impulse to develop the ionoilluminescence that is not so widespread IBA technique. It was really a collaboration between the two teams. So we can see that beyond the research, beyond the inclusive nature of our users, we also develop the instrumentation through our transnational access. And this is exactly what we've done here from FixLab. So what is our future of access? As we've heard before, we do estimate that we're going to have a different number of facilities, so around 30 facilities, around 140 techniques, and the archives will make up the new access in E-RIHS, along with the virtual access, which will be provided by Digilab. And for me, that's it. And thank you so much for your attention.